Welcome to the Read-Aloud Revival podcast, the show that helps you make meaningful and lasting connections with your kids through books. I'm your host, Sarah Mackenzie, and I am thrilled to be talking today to the incredibly talented illustrator, Charles Santoso. Charles has brought so many beloved books to life with his whimsical and heartfelt illustrations, and he's the illustrator of my newest picture book, Dear Duck, Please Come. Today, we're diving into the collaborative process of creating a picture book, the inspiration behind Dear Duck, Please Come, and how illustrations tell fully half of the story. Let's dive in. Okay, I'm just going to admit it. Dear Duck, Please Come is the most fun I've ever had writing a book. The idea for it came to me when one of my twins said, "Mom, I lost my tooth." And I was just in sort of a silly mood that day, so I instantly responded, "Oh no, we'd better find it." And then I thought, that's kind of funny. So I proceeded to write this story, which opens with Duck checking his mailbox and finding a letter from Rabbit. "Dear Duck, please come. I lost my tooth." Well, Duck knows that a good friend thing to do is to help his friend with his problem. So he's going to help Rabbit find that tooth, and he looks all over Piney Glen, gathering companions along the way. Do they find the tooth? Well, you'll have to read it to find out. I wrote the words to this story, but that's only half of the story. Fully half of it happens in the illustrations, and they are hilarious and pretty brilliant illustrations by Charles Santoso. Now, Charles was born in Indonesia, raised in Australia, and now he lives in Singapore. He's illustrated tons of books we love here at Read-Aloud Revival, and I was over the moon when he agreed to illustrate Dear Duck, Please Come. Here's my conversation, the first time I had met Charles face-to-face, in fact, after we'd made the book together. Here's my conversation with Charles Santoso. So, Charles, this is the first time you and I are meeting face-to-face, which we were just chatting about, which is pretty wild because we've made a book together. So,
yes.
It seems
Hi,
funny
Sarah.
that this is the first time we've actually... Yeah, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
This is so fun. Okay, well, I've long been a fan of your illustrations, and you have
Thank
such
you.
this wide range of styles. I am so curious to know, as a kid,
Yeah.
which illustrators you loved best, or like when you were young. I don't know, even now. I'm just kind of curious, who are the illustrators
Yeah.
that you gravitated toward?
So when I was a kid, there wasn't too many books that I can find back then because it's quite rare because I was born in Indonesia. So it's like I have to go to library and stuff to find these beautiful books and stuff. But I found like some great ones. For example, Richard Scarry. I was like, my mind was blown like when I saw that. And there's some like encyclopedia with dinosaurs drawing and stuff like that. Some gnomes, like books about gnomes and stuff. And apparently it's really well known from Netherlands. So mixed bags and stuff like that. But when I'm starting to grow older and stuff like that, so I started to know more and more. And now I'm quite old now, and I just love lots and lots and lots of illustrators, more and more. And the more I like explore this like world of picture books, the more I love it. I used to read a lot of like fairy tales book when I was a kid because that's what I can find, and then lots of beautiful drawings in there and stuff like that. So I know all the fairy tales and Thriller Pigs and stuff like that, and then they always have beautiful drawings. But now I know who drew them, and I even get to meet some of them. So the quick answer to your question is like lots and lots of them.
Yes, the fact that you mentioned Richard Scarry it makes so much sense to me because one of the things that really delighted me about the illustrations for Dear Duck is how much storytelling is happening in the pictures. Like there's just there's like a whole sub story happening, like with the turtle. We'll talk about it. But like that reminds me.
I love the turtle. I love
Oh
the
my
turtle.
goodness. I can tell by the way that you like handled his illustrations and the whole stories that you gave him, like with the pictures alone, really feels like it's like a nod to sort of Richard Scarry's like the stories that he gave without any words, like just the storytelling he did with his pictures.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I mean, I have to mention, like, of course, Arnold Noble, not Arnold Noble, but Arnold Lobel, and then also like, of course, like Maurice Sendak and stuff like that. But it's just so fun to illustrate your story. It's
oh gosh,
I'm honored to get this really fun one.
Well, and I should mention here, because I didn't know this until kind of recently, that you and Joe Sutphin, I think, are pals.
Joe
right?
is great.
Yeah.
Joe is great.
Yeah. So Joe is one of my favorite illustrators. He's been on the show, and he's going to be illustrating a book of mine in a couple of years.
Fantastic.
So, yeah. So fun.
There you go.
So that connection was like, oh, you guys know each other. Of course you do. That's so fun.
It's I mean, the world of illustrators are so great. I mean, I'm so fortunate and grateful to be able to meet like my peers online and stuff. So when a lot of people say like, oh, social media is really toxic and stuff, I actually, of course, there's some toxicity and stuff like that, but I'm actually grateful for social media because I get to meet lots of people that I that really admire and stuff. And Joe is one of them, of course. And we sometimes, like, I remember that he's used to send me messages, say, how are you going and stuff like that. And we just chat and stuff like that. And it's, we become friends. It's great. And
do you ever like see someone's illustration or like a book and go, oh my gosh, man, I wish I had illustrated that? Does that ever happen to you?
Well, if you actually asked me, let's say 15 years ago, then I would say lots of them. Like, for example, like, where the wild things are, I wish I was illustrated that and stuff. But the more I go and become illustrator myself, as in like a picture book illustrator, the more I think like, actually, each of them are actually quite unique in terms of like solving the story, the way they tell the story and stuff like that. So I'm just happy for them to actually just show me what their visions are, and then and for me to actually just struggle with my own kind of like way of not telling a story in a way. So so to answer your question is like, it's the not really of other people's, but I'm just excited to get stories from writers or story that I actually write myself, which is amazing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I can see that influence in your work, because I said this earlier, but you do have such a wide range. There are some illustrators who you just know, like Tommy DePaola was a friend of mine. You just know. Yes.
Oh, Tommy's work.
In fact,
my goodness. I mean,
can you see? I have to move my head for you to see it. I have an original piece of his art right behind me.
Oh my goodness. I'm so jealous.
Yeah, his assistant sent that to me after I got a chance to speak at the Postal Service. They made a Stregonona stamp after he passed away.
Yeah.
The USPS did, and they do this big ceremony, and I was invited to speak there, and gosh, it was beautiful. Anyway,
amazing.
That was I know.
I can speak of
hours
so of this.
You can you see it's a Tommy DePaola illustration, and you're like, oh, I know who made that. And then there's other illustrators, like Lei Wen Pham is one who comes to mind, who has like such a wide range that sometimes I'll be like, whoa, this was by Lei Wen Pham too? Like, this is crazy. Right. Very prolific too. Your style is like that. You have like Feathers Together and what's another one? Ida
Always,
Yes, Ida Always. That's got like this vibrant, really colorful, almost kind of
painterly,
yes, painterly, soft. And then there's like Dandy that has like stronger lines, bold shapes, right? And then like Feeling Grateful and Finding Muchness, which are, I don't know, would you describe them?
Kind of like, with pencil drawings, like very,
And there's like a limited color palette. And,
yes.
And when I'm looking at them, I think, well, this is the only way this could have been told. Of course, he would use this method. Because it's so easy to say that as the person looking at the picture book. But how do you know? How do you decide which style to use? And like, is there a style you like using more than others, or is it just? Talk to me about that.
With every story that I get, right? Because I have to love the story first. I mean, I'm grateful to get all these wonderful stories in, right? I know that it's deceptively simple. I know it's how hard it is to actually write a picture book. It's like every word needs to matter and stuff. So when I actually read it, I have to kind of like read them aloud, like the story. And once I actually read them aloud, like there's a bit of almost like a sparks of like visions almost. When you mention the word styles, I just want like the illustration to complement the words. So it has to be, to me, it has to be 50-50. The illustration can't actually overpower the words and vice versa. So anything that can balance the words, that I will choose. And the thing that I usually choose is like, of course, the tone of the illustration needs to fit with the words, whether it's a comedic, whether it's actually quite like, for example, I'd always need something that's quite soft and quite emotional. Dandy needs to be quite comical, and I just elevate that in a way just to match Amy's like strong comedic style of like writing stuff. So with Dear Duck, it's when I actually read with the story, it has this like naivety, but also like quite classic in a way. Reminding me a little bit of like Winnie the Pooh, for example, even though it's not directly thing, but it has that kind of like feeling in a way. So it needs to be quite classic, but it needs to be quite colorful too, because the characters are quite colorful, and then the worlds are quite colorful, and it matches that the story. That's how I choose it. And in the end of the day, it's almost like an instinct and kind of like taste too, whether like my 6 years old self or 5 years old self would be excited or not to actually read this book. That's the test. So I just have to keep looking at it from that 5 years old and then back to my 40 something years old and back to 6 years old. So that's that balance in a way.
Well, it's like, I love that you actually called out Winnie the Pooh, because that was our Kirkus review called it great for fans of A.A. Milne's Winnie the Pooh, which I was
right.
I mean, if they're going to compare the book to something, we'll take it.
Well, I'll take it. That's a totally like a compliment.
So when you get a manuscript from like your agent to consider to illustrate, do you sort of know like right away, like, oh, like, do you get those visions like you were talking about, like sparks right away, or do you, like, how does that work for you?
Well, I mean, when there's no sparks, I will just go like, oh, maybe this is not right for me in a way. Okay. So I need that kind of like sparks in a way. I need to at least have a connection to the story somehow. Yeah. That's how I decide. I mean, of course, like I'm grateful to get all this opportunity and stuff, but sometimes I would have to say, maybe this is not right for me and stuff like that. And some story will just go like, oh yeah, this is great.
Yeah, I think it kind of reminds me of our editor who works with us on a lot of books, and in fact edited Dear Duck, the text of Dear Duck, Please Come for Us. He will say that a lot of times when he's working on a book, and he also edited like the Enola Holmes books and all the books by Ruta Sepetys and the Ranger's Apprentice and stuff, and a bunch of picture books. He will say that like a lot of times he'll see it and think like, oh, this is going to be a great book, but I don't think I'm the right person to edit it. Like he can just sort of see that there's like a gap. There's just something missing. And you're like, he's like, somebody else will look at this and go, I have to take this. And that's what he wants all of his projects to be like.
There's a difference between like, oh, this is a great book. I know it's going to be challenging, but
okay. Yeah.
But there's other books where you just go like, oh yeah, this is not really for me. So that's the difference. Where, Dear Ducks, when it comes to me, I know there's going to be a challenge with this, but I will, that sparks, because it's just a very, very fake one. It's not when I actually put it on the paper or on a screen, then all the stuff needs to be resolved and stuff like that. That's the best thing.
So that's so interesting, because I'm like looking at the illustrations. When I first saw the sketches come in, and I mean, you've made, like, you brought the world to life on so many different levels, like the home, like duck's home being an egg. We'll put some of these illustrations on the screen for people who are watching this video. And, you know, Rabbit's house is a carrot. And then like the expressions of all of the characters, which feels like it always amazes me how with just, I mean, with that, like how much expression you can get with just a few different lines and shapes, you know, like for a character.
Thank you.
And the mailboxes, like everything is like rich. So what is that? Like when you were reading it, did you kind of see some of those right away? Or was it when like you were sketching them when you got started on it? Or can you talk to me a little bit about that process?
Yeah. So basically the base of the story itself, it's really fun. I mean, again, it's really simple, but it's so, I'm sure it's very hard and it's really fun. It's just this naivety from a duck, right? That sees this letter and just goes like, because he's like, in my mind, starting to, when I actually start sketching, he just goes like, you know, I have to solve this as soon as possible. It's like, I don't even think about it. I just have to solve because I'm, you know, I have to help Rabbit anyway. So, the characters start to emerge, right? So with that, the environment start to emerge too, like what kind of place that it lives and stuff like that. But the simplicity of the story, again, deceptively simple, makes me, when I sketch it, I just like, oh, actually, I just do this as a placeholder, like a circle or something like that. When I actually draw a circle and just go like, bing, just go like, wait a minute, it should be an egg. He just gonna live in an egg. And then it's just like, I just put that in. I just put those ridiculous ideas in. And then of course, like, you know, I send it to you and then see if you on board with this like ridiculous ideas. And of course,
always like, on board. I don't think I was ever like not on board with that. I think I was like, what the heck? This is magic.
So I just put like some seeds in there. Like, for example, like, okay, what's the mail system in there, right? It's like in the world, it's like, of course, you know, Rabbit, that he's not gonna run to put them into the mailbox. He's just gonna go like, oh, you know, I'm just gonna send it through Uber or whatever. And what's that, right? Oh, there's this like pigeon service or bird service, and it starts to emerge. And it's,
I mean, I'll say when I saw that like when I saw the pigeon, I was like, oh, I mean, we might be able to just keep on going with stories about this Piney Glen place, because I'm pretty sure there are more stories now that I'm seeing because you brought in like these other characters. It's just fun. And again, I don't want it to kind of like distract the viewers from the story, but I think like when I actually tested to actually read it aloud and again put myself into this like 5 years old, I can see myself get really interested with this kind of like detail and stuff like that. And people can always go back to reread and, you know, and find new things, hopefully. Was there a particular like page or spread or part of the story that you found either especially fun or especially challenging or both or either to create?
Well, most of the books that I do, right, the challenge is always in the sketch phase, to actually make the story, again, as smooth as possible, but also have a bit of a kind of like a interest in the middle. For example, like when they're going up to the tree and stuff like that. I mean, the first sketch was like just a normal kind of like, you know, in a normal book format. And I thought like, oh, it'll be fun if, you know, we need to flip the book too, to actually give that vertical feelings and stuff like that. So those are the challenging part, because it might get a bit jarring and stuff when people actually read it. But how to keep the book energy as strong as it can be from the beginning till the end, that's the challenge. But it's challenging overall, but it's really fun. It was really fun.
Well, one of the things I think is kind of it's trickier about picture books, whether it's the writing or illustrating, I think, but I don't know the illustrator perspective on this. So I'm so curious to ask you this. I only know the writing perspective on pacing, because like as a writer, as a picture book writer, I find like page turns and pacing to be very important and like such an important piece that I have to kind of start thinking about it right away.
Mm-hmm.
And then from the illustrator perspective, of course, you're doing so much of the pacing in illustrations, whether they're like spots or they're full bleed
Yep.
or they're a complete wordless spread, for example, which is
That's the one. Yep. Yeah.
yes. I will put this on the screen as well.
Right.
But when I saw this, I just burst out laughing
Oh,
because
thank you. That's good.
there's no way for me to write that pause really into the words. You did it in the illustrations. And this is the thing I think a lot of people don't realize. You know, authors, picture book authors and illustrators oftentimes don't even meet. Like, we made this whole book without meeting. But like it's not like we're like, we actually were tossing back and forth ideas
Yes.
through our art director. And that is pretty unusual too. I think a lot of times they don't, we don't even get to do that.
Right.
But I think it's amazing. Like in my writing, I'm trying to like pace that. Like, how do I make it kind of slow down when the turtle and then speed up for the squirrel? I did it all through dialogue. That's the only way I could figure out how to do it. And then you added a whole nother element with the illustrations. For one, the turtle speaks slow, which was when I was trying to slow
Right.
down the pacing. And then
That's
you gave it this wordless spread that's just hilarious. Then the very next friend that they rally is the squirrel. And I did it with the dialogue, trying to like make the squirrel talk fast and a lot. And you kind of like the jarringness of having to turn the book actually, I think, also does that pacing of like, whoop, now we're going to like,
Thankfully, again, I think it's kind of a rare thing, I have to say, like when I actually receive a text that actually kind of like, I can feel almost the feeling that you want to get, and I can almost hear them starting to, which is great. So thank you for that. So the turtle, I was laughing when I read the manuscript, and it's just go like, I think we just need to slow it really, really down. I mean, so I just go like, yeah, we just gotta do lots of panels basically to really, really slow it.
yeah.
And thankfully we got the spread for it, like the
Yeah.
space for it. So I just go like, oh yeah, just try that. And I'm glad that, everyone's happy with it. So yeah.
I mean, it isn't just the fact that it's a wordless spread that makes it slow down, which wordless spreads always make the reader slow down. But I think part of the genius here that some of readers will feel when they're reading it, but they won't know it, which is kind of, I would like to be like, but look at what's happening here. We'll put it on the screen here so you can see the 6 different panels. And because Charles didn't just give you one wordless spread, he gave you 6 wordless spreads in those panels. It takes you 6 times as long to look at this page.
That's right.
This spread, which really slows down and makes you realize like this turtle is like, Badger's going to have to pick that guy up before we keep moving.
That's right. That's right.
Speaking of, did you have like a favorite character to illustrate in this book? Or
Well, I mean, the turtle's just like, I think I drew one of the sketch, and I think I was like mistaken it for something. I just kind of like draw some kind of like leaves or something, and it just like close to his mouth or whatever. And I just go like, oh, maybe she's gonna eat it. He's just gonna eat it. and then I just go like, maybe he just a hungry turtle. It's just like he just loves to eat. So I just goes. I got distracted because like Duck is just like his head is just on finding the tooth, right? So it's just like, and Badger is like such a great friend, and it's just big, and he just try to help, always help, just help. And and the turtle is just spacing out. It's just like just try to move, of course, really slow, and he just tried to eat. So, and because he got carried away by everyone, so he just like, eat slowly. So yeah, it's just probably my favorite.
I love that personalities, like how
Accidentally.
you've drawn out the difference in all the different personalities. Like, yes, Duck is just so intent. It's so interesting. I came up with the idea for this book because one of my kids said, hey, Mom, I lost my tooth. And I was feeling like in a silly mood and was like, oh, no, we'd better find it. And it just was like, all of a sudden I was like, that's kind of a funny story. And then I thought, oh, I'm sure there's other stories that tell this. So I look and I'm like, I don't think there are. I'm going to try this. And the funny thing is, it wasn't until after the book was written and it was in editing and I was like working with the editor that I realized like, oh, this is a book about how we all think that the best thing we can do for our friends is to fix their problems. But actually the best thing we can do for our friends is to be there when they need us. But that wasn't like, it's not like I sat down and went like, I'm going to write a book about how the best thing you can do for your friend is not to overfunction for them. I didn't write, it wasn't that. I just literally thought like, oh, that's funny. I lost my tooth. Like that's that's something that happens in my house all the time.
It's great. It's great. Again, it's a simple, like, but very deceptively simple story. But I think lots of kids will kind of resonate with it. I think too, because sometimes it's kind of like there's a misunderstanding and stuff. But the intention is what's important, and that's amazing. I think. Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things you did with this book that I did not think of at all, and then when you started doing it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so fun, is you hid teeth all throughout this book in the illustrations.
Yeah.
Tell me about where this idea came from.
Okay, so with the teeth, of course, I think from my memory, I mean, I can't claim everything is from me. It's the collaborations, right? I mean,
I don't know. I think that one was all you, actually. Pretty sure.
So I think there's a part where it just goes like, the cloud or something. It just looks a bit like a tooth or something like that, and it just sprung from there. It's just suddenly it's like, oh, yeah, you can put lots of tooth. So some readers might see it, some might not, but it's fun. It's there. So
which is also kind of fun because it's kind of a Richard Scarry thing. When you find Goldbug on all the different pages, there was that little bit. Yeah. And then our art director had she was getting such a kick out of all these hidden teeth that she started like the copyright page and the back of the way the back of the book is designed.
Great. Kara is great.
Kara is brilliant. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And of course, like even in the cover, you just see the cover and stuff. So hopefully people would just go like, oh, wait a minute. That looks a bit like, Yeah.
Am I supposed to see that there? Or
Yeah.
We have a lot of kids who are illustrators and want to keep learning to be better illustrators. And I wonder if you have any advice for them.
Right. So I think the thing that I would say, I mean, apart from, of course, keep drawing, keep practicing and stuff. But I think what's most important is like live your life, like try new things in your life that is actually outside art in a way, because that's what's going to make your work more interesting, and that's will give you the style, which is like yourself, right? So what you like, your taste, the type of food that you love, and just keep expanding that. Like the more you know, the more like you can put things in your work that actually a little more unique than just a normal things that other illustrators might actually draw to. Just keep asking yourself questions, getting to know yourself.
I love that. Like experiencing life outside, off of the page, right? And then asking yourself questions. I think that's such good advice because so often I know the advice that we hear and we tell is like for writers, young writers, it's just write more. And you do need to write more. But if you don't actually, if I have found that in my life, sometimes I will be like, I just can't. I don't know why I don't have any ideas, but it's like, well, you are going to have to put down your pencil or your keyboard or whatever you're writing on and go live a little bit so you have something to write about.
Right. That's right. So, for example, like Roald Dahl, he has like tons of experience, like throughout his life. Like that's how he come out with all this brilliant stuff. And then, like Barbara Cooney. I know you love Barbara Cooney.
Oh, I
love Barbara Cooney. Like, Miss Trumpius is one of my favorite book. I mean, not because I'm talking to you, but it is truly. When I read it, it's like, this is amazing book. Like in the story, like the characters went through different experience before actually,
I mean, that was so much like Barbara's life. Like she actually did. She had such a rich, abundant life.
Right.
That probably felt like too much a lot of the time, but ended up spilling over into her art. Yeah.
That's right.
Are there any like specific exercises or like, I don't know, things that you do, maybe if you're stuck, or for example, I can give you an example. One, when I am really like, I have no story ideas, but I really want to just write for a little bit, I will take a first line from any book off my shelf, just the first line, and then I'll just keep going for like 5 or 10 minutes, making up the rest of the story, like a brand new story.
Ah, right.
It's like a hack because I don't have to
That's
come
fun.
up with this story.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
Is there anything like that for drawing
Yes,
or?
yes. Especially for something that comes with the storyline, right? So, for
Okay.
example, if you want to be an illustrator for picture books or I don't know, graphic novels or whatever, and you don't really have an idea of a story, yes, take like a classic story, for example, Little Red Riding Hood or something like that. And just take that and use that as a base when you actually don't have any ideas, and just starting to create the characters and the environments and try with other stories and stuff like that. But just come out with your version of it. I think
Yes.
that is a very good practice in a way, because you don't have to worry too much about the basic story because you kind of know it. So you can kind of like make it really fun. So for example, Cinderella or whatever, and make it into, I don't know, space if you really love like drawing, I don't know, astronaut or whatever. Yeah, so you can do that. And then that actually, I think, train your creativity too in a way to actually expand a simple story into something of your own in a way. Yeah. And who
That's
knows,
so great.
you might create a new story based on your, exercises in a way. Yeah.
That's so. Well, one of the books we have coming out at Waxwing later in 2025 in the fall is called Flora and the Jazzers, and it is kind of a Cinderella story, but it's a weasel, and it's set in 1920s New York. And I didn't write it. It's written and illustrated by Astrid Shekels, and it's so fun because it's a story you've never read before, but it's a story you've read before. That makes me wonder: is there like a classic that you're like, man, I would love to play with a version of that?
A classic. Okay, like Alice in Wonderland is always like something that every artist can kind of like get themselves into, and then it's just like come out with something unique themselves. So Alice in Wonderland, of course, or even like classics like The Hobbit.
Yeah. Okay.
It's really fun because it's just I can do a lot of things with it. But for example, like Little Prince, I'm not gonna touch it.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not gonna touch it because it's perfect as is to me.
Okay.
To me, it's just no, But for the others, yes.
Another example, since we were talking about Tommy DePaola and Stregonona, another example of a story that's like a version of something I just think the kids might think is interesting. If you have Stregonona at home, kids, take it off your shelf or go get it from the library and look at it. It will remind you of a folktale because it was actually Tommy rewriting one of his favorite folktales, The Magic Porridge Pot. And he turned it into a pasta pot, put it in Italy.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
So cool. Yeah.
Sometimes it just forms into something else that is actually really unique. Like I used to work in film before, so I studied lots of films and stuff like that. So a lot of people loves, like, for example, a film from Studio Ghibli, Totoro or whatever. Little that they know is like it's actually almost like a retelling of a Beauty and Beast or something like that, but they form it into something that's really unique.
Okay, to you, what's the best part of being an illustrator?
Well, everything. That's what I love. But the best part is like when after I finish the hard work and stuff and solve everything and do the drawing and finish and it goes to print. Like the first time I actually received the book.
Yeah.
Oh, it just I never get tired of it. Because I love picture books. Like I love it. I mean, you see like the back, it's like they're all picture books. It's I love the object. I love the smell. I love the people that made it. Really nice people, and then very, very talented. And then it's kind of it's just, I think it's underappreciated, picture books, I find, because that's like, especially the read aloud part of it. It's like because like to me as an illustrator, of course, like the best part of it is illustrating and stuff, but when it's combined with the text, it's just magic. It's truly magic. I mean, I truly love it. So the best part of it is like I'm I'm part of it. That's to me. That's yeah. I'm really grateful.
It is like it's such an immersive. Like I'm feeling this deeply because I'm like I feel this way about picture books too, and I feel like it's very immersive. And also, then when you get lucky enough to be able to be making one, you get to see all the thought and care that goes into
Yes.
each thing, tiny thing. Like every part of a picture book is part of the story. You know, from the shape of the book
Yes.
to the
and every words, right? I mean, you probably
Yeah.
get lots of edits from like your editor or whatever. Can you change this one? This like one words can be stronger. Like it's like a poem. It's like a poem.
Well, we even changed some of the words after the illustrations were done, which isn't always how publishers work, but I love doing that because if the illustrations are doing half the storytelling, then probably the words are doing too much work after it's been illustrated. You know, like like when I'm writing, I don't have the illustrations in my head or anything. So then once I see the illustrations, I can go like, oh, we don't even need to say that piece because like
I love that.
It's and so it
just
that's
great.
It's also more of a collaborative storytelling than so much other writing because you have your author and your illustrator. Sometimes that's the same person, but then you still have your editor, you have your art director, you have all of this creative energy coming in. It reminds me maybe more of, not that I've ever made a film. It reminds me of making a film, which I've never done. It reminds me though of like the fact that you need a whole team of like creative genius to come in from all the different ways. And
That's right. That's right. I mean, I love film too, but picture book is so personal. It's so nice. I can talk forever about it. Like different authors. For example, I love Maurice Sendak so much that I actually collected all his interviews and stuff to the point where it feels like I listen to him talking. Like Tommy, I listen to his interviews and stuff like that. There's one interview from SBWI. Was it like 2 hours or something? It's just
yes, I know which one you're talking about.
so delightful, and you get the energy that he loves it. He just loves it. He loves the world. He just loves telling the story. It's just the best thing, I think.
Which is actually maybe that's like a trait. I haven't thought of that exactly before about picture books that I love because Tommy did love the world, and then he loved like capturing some of that in a book. That's exactly how I would describe Barbara Cooney. Is like that's how her son described her to me. Is she loved the world around her and was just trying to like capture a sliver of that beauty that she saw in front of her eyes on the page. Yeah. And it's what I see and I hear in you too when I look at your art. So
thank you very much. Literally the best thing about picture books is like you can stay on the page for hours if you want to. It's just they can kind of like do whatever. And kids like hearing kids kind of like laughing at the jokes and stuff, it's the best.
Speaking of, all of you listeners and viewers, if you have pictures of your kids enjoying this book of ours, please tag us on Instagram.
Please.
Yes, I'll put Charles. Is it just Charles Santoso? I'm trying to remember what your handle is on Instagram.
Yes,
I think it is.
Just for Charles Santoso, yeah.
Okay, Charles Santoso and Read-Aloud Revival is where I'll see it. If you tag us, we'll
amazing.
be able. Yeah.
That's going to make my day.
Totally.
I love it. Or if they drew characters from the book too, they'll be.
Charles, thanks so much for coming on the show, and thanks for making this book with me. It was so fun. It's so much
thank
fun.
you, Sarah. I mean, yeah.
Dear Duck, Please Come is available now wherever you get your books. Here's something fun. I don't remember if we said this in our conversation or not. We actually sold through the entire first print run. That was a lot of copies. It was 10,000 copies before the book ever hit shelves. So it's been quite popular. And I think you'll really love it. You can get it anywhere you buy your books, at a real brick and mortar bookstore or at your favorite online bookstore. And every single purchase of the book comes with a free audiobook that comes either with or without page turn cues, whichever you prefer. And also the video book, so that even if you're driving to basketball practice or too busy doing laundry or stirring the soup, your child can still be read aloud to and enjoy the delicious illustrations by Charles Santoso. And please take pictures of your kids reading Dear Duck and tag both Charles Santoso and Read-Aloud Revival in your posts so we don't miss them, because you will completely make our day. Show notes for this episode are at readaloudrevival.com/258. I will be back in 2 weeks with another episode for you. But in the meantime, you know what to do. Go make meaningful and lasting connections with your kids through books.